Today we are talking sourdough starter. All right, so I've never done this before, but it is all the rave right now. Everybody's doing sourdough bread and making their starters or getting a starter to do their own. And I was like, I want to do that. However, it seemed like a very difficult task. All of the measuring you have to do, and I was like, there's got to be an easier way. I'm going to just try to see if I can measure it out on my own without a scale and see if it works. I did do some research to kind of see if there's anybody out there that does it. And I did find a couple videos of some women that do just kind of measure it and kind of get it started, and it has worked for them. So I'm going to try that method because in the busy life, I want to make things as easy as possible and as quick as possible. All right, so what we're gonna do to start it, this is day one. You need flour, water, a mason jar, and then something to cover the mason jar with. I'm using a coffee filter and a rubber band. I use coffee filters and rubber bands for any time I need to cover something and let it sit or ferment. So that's just easy, and I always have coffee filters on hand. So to start, the flour that you're gonna use, you want to use whole grain flour, I found out, or unbleached flour. So I have King Arthur's unbleached flour. You can also use bread flour, but the unbleached flour is basically needed so that you're not taking out all of the bacteria that you're using to ferment the sourdough, right? So basically you want it to be unbleached for that. But again, you can use whole grain or bread flour as well. That works. So I'm just starting with a 1/4 cup of flour. I have regular unbleached, and then I'm using a 1/4 cup of distilled water. I'm using it from our osmosis system. Again, the same thing with the distilled water. You don't want anything with chlorine in it because it will affect the fermentation process that we're trying to achieve here. All right, so once you get that all in there, I mean, a 1/4 cup of each does not really make very much to start with, so I'm kind of anxious to see how it goes, but throughout the process, we'll get there. So I'm just stirring this up really, really good. I think you want to get a little air bubbles and stuff in there to kind of get the process started. Alright, so mix it up really, really good there. Alright, and now that it's all mixed in there, I'm going to cover it up. Coffee filter, rubber band, and I'm just going to kind of stick it in the corner of the kitchen here. I want to keep it a little bit warm. Sometimes if it's warmer, it actually helps to speed up the process a little bit. So the kitchen's always nice. Just make sure it's a nice dark place. So we have finished day one of our starter, mixing it all together, and we will come back in 24-ish hours to do the next step. All right, we are back for day two of our sourdough starter. Right, so we're gonna remove the coffee filter and band. We have a few bubbles. It's a little bubbly, but not much. We don't expect much. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna discard a 1/4 cup of the mixture. Now, the discard is not good enough to use yet. It hasn't really done anything at all to even use for, your bagels or pancakes. So we're going to just completely discard this first batch, all right? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna add our 1/4 cup of flour again, and a 1/4 cup of distilled water. All right, we're gonna stir it up really, really good. Now, one of the key factors when you are doing sourdough is making sure that what you're feeding your sourdough starter is more than what is in there. All right, so the reason why we discard is because we don't want to add another 1/4 cup right away with a 1/4 cup of water. It doesn't really feed it enough. So you have to discard some of it in order to decrease how much is in there, and then you can add to it in order to feed it correctly. So that's why we do the discard. And anytime that you are feeding your sourdough, sourdough starter, so if you are making something and you use a portion of it and you're wondering whether or not you can feed it, you can feed it. You just need to make sure that you're feeding it well more than what is in there. So if you have a 1/2 cup in there when you're done using it and you don't have enough to make anything else, then add a cup of flour and a cup of distilled water, a little bit less than a cup of water. And that way you're feeding it a lot more than what's in there. All right, so we're just gonna make sure that this is all stirred up really well. We're going to go ahead and put our, I'm gonna wipe the rim off real quickly. We're gonna go ahead and put our coffee filter, our rubber band back on it, and then we're gonna cover it with a towel and put it in a nice warm spot in the kitchen. Okay, we're back for day 3 of the sourdough starter. Now we're gonna kind of assess it. We're getting a little bit of hooch on top, which is just this watery liquid, and that's completely normal. That's okay. So what we're going to do, basically the hooch is just saying, I'm hungry, feed me, and that's what you want to do with your sourdough starter. All right, so we're going to kind of stir it in a little bit. Get my little stick here. We're gonna stir it up just a little bit. We're gonna do the same exact thing as we did yesterday right now. It's not quite active enough. It is getting a little bubbly, so you could almost save this discard. If it's bubbly enough, you could save the discard for things like your bagels or pancakes, tortillas, things like that. So I am going to discard another 1/4 cup here. And yeah, mine's bubbly enough. I'm gonna go ahead and put this into a mason jar, mason jar, and I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna keep adding any of my discard to that, and so that I can use it. All right, so we have a 1/4 cup, a little bit, maybe even a little bit more than a 1/4 cup left in there. So I am going to do the same. I'm gonna put 1/4 cup. I'm actually probably gonna do a little bit more than a 1/4 cup, a heaping 1/4 cup of flour to make sure that I have more than what is in the bottom of the jar. And then I'm going to put a 1/4 cup of this distilled water in there. And we're going to mix it all together really, really well. Now my kitchen's been kind of warm the last couple of days because it's been sunny. Today's a little bit more overcast, so I'm not sure what it's gonna do, but with that being said, sometimes it rises or it ferments a lot quicker when it's warmer. So that might be why it got so watery last night. It's because it was warm enough. It just became more active and was hungry. So we got it nice and stirred. We're getting bubbles kind of in there as we stir, which activates it. All right, and then we're gonna do the same thing as we did yesterday. I gotta wipe the lid off just a little bit. Otherwise okay. We're gonna put our coffee filter on the rubber band. We're gonna cover it with the towel and put it in a warm spot, and I'll see you for day 4 tomorrow.
Okay, we are back for day 4 of our sourdough starter, and we have a lot of hooch on top today, which means it is really hungry. Yesterday it was hungry, today it's really hungry. Now, yesterday it was super warm in here, so my guess is it got activated pretty quickly, and then instead of discarding and feeding it, it just kind of settled down, and then that's when you get a lot of the hooch too. So today we're going to do something a little bit different because we have all that. I am going to discard a third a cup of, I'm going to mix this in a little bit. I'm going to discard a third cup of the starter. That way we're kind of dropping it down even further. And then we can feed it the 1/4 cup. This will help activate it a little bit better too, so that we're feeding it a lot more than what's in there. That's a third a cup there. So now maybe a little bit more, kind of overflowing that third a cup or making it nice and full. All right, so after we get that, we still got some little bubbles there left in there, which is good. We're going to add our 1/4 cup of flour. Remember, unbleached. And our 1/4 cup of distilled water. Matthew, can we get out of there, honey? And we're going to stir it up. Now you can, this third a cup here of discard is pretty bubbly, so I'm going to save it like I did with the stuff from yesterday and just put it in the refrigerator and keep it until I can use it. Hold on. No. Got a child spraying dish soap underneath the counter, so sorry about that. All right, so we're just going to mix this up. Like I said, I'm going to put the discard in a mason jar with the discard from yesterday, and we can use it to make bagels. That's typically what I use with my discard, so check out that video when I get that posted in a couple weeks. All right, so I'm just going to finish stirring this up. We're going to do the same thing we have done. I'm going to wipe the jar off a little bit, and then we're going to cover it with the coffee filter, the rubber band, and towel, and I'm going to put it into a warm spot in the kitchen, and we'll check back tomorrow. Welcome back to day 5 of our sourdough starter, and it has been quite a while since I checked this because, well, life, it's been busy. So there is quite a bit of hooch on the top here. So I'm going to kind of stir it in a little bit. And again, it's been very warm in the kitchen. So what I'm going to do is, when I stir it up, it gets pretty bubbly. So I'm going to do the same thing I did yesterday. We're going to discard about a third, maybe a little bit less than a third. Yeah, about a third. We're going to do a third. And I'm going to do my 1/4 cup of flour and 1/4 cup of distilled water. And we're going to stir it up really good. And then it's getting bubbly already, so I am going to, hopefully the morning goes okay, I'm going to check it in the morning to kind of see where we're at. And if it gets to be as bubbly as it is already getting, and it's pretty active in the morning, then we're almost ready to go. And at that point in time, what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 tablespoons out, which is 1/8 of a cup, and we're going to put it into a new jar. And then we're going to feed it extra. We're going to feed it 1/2 cup and then a little bit less than 1/2 cup of water, so that we're really getting it going. And then at that point in time, if I can do it in the morning, then by the time I get home, I'm going to see where it's at. If it doubles in size or if it grows quite a bit and it's nice and bubbly, then it's good to go. and we could pop it in the refrigerator and have it ready to go. If not, we might need another day. So today's day 5, tomorrow would be day 6. Typically it's anywhere between, 5 to 10 days. Usually the average is 7, but with how warm it's been, this is kind of taking off a little bit quicker. So if yours is not nearly as active as mine is, you're going to kind of continue along this same route of discarding and then adding until it gets pretty bubbly and active. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing I have been doing. We're going to, you can see it's already kind of bubbling and getting, I don't know, you probably can't see that in there. It's probably too difficult to see. Anyway, so kind of wipe my rim up here again. Alright, so I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to try and attempt to see it in the morning, see where we're at, and kind of go from there for day 6. Alright? Let's cover it. Rubber band, towel, warm area, and I'm going to add my discard to my jar that I had in the refrigerator of my discard, and we'll make something with that later. Okay, we're back for day 6 of our sourdough starter, and I didn't check it this morning like I said because I knew it was going to be too busy. I shouldn't have tried that anyway. And so of course we have a lot of hooch like we did before. I'm trying to find my stir. Here it is. So I'm going to do the same thing. The only difference is when you find, since this is like the 3rd day that we've had a lot of hooch on top, when you find that happening, I'm going to discard a lot again, and then I'm actually going to feed it more flour than I do water. Alright, so instead of giving it 1/4 of flour and water, I'm going to give it 1/4 cup of flour and then a little bit less than that of water. And to see if that helps. But we're going to kind of discard around this. When I stir it up, it is pretty bubbly, so it is just about active. I think tomorrow, for sure, we're going to be ready to get it into the refrigerator and stop it all the way. So, discard this here. And then we're going to give it the 1/4 cup of flour. And then, like I said, I'm not going to completely fill this up all the way. I'm going to stir it up. Yeah, you can already see the bubbles kind of coming in here, so that's a good sign. Once we find that it is nice and bubbly and active, which I think we're pretty much there, what we're going to end up doing tomorrow, I believe I said this yesterday, is we're going to just take the 2 tablespoons out and we're going to feed it 1/2 cup instead of a 1/4 cup. So we're really going to feed it good because we want to increase the amount in order to be able to put it in our recipes. All right, and most recipes are at least 1/2 cup of sourdough starter. All right, so I say that so that if you're there today, if you felt like yours was active enough today and you want to start that process, you could. You could take the 2 tablespoons out. That's before you do any, discarding and adding. You want to take it out. So. All right, so we have it nice and stirred here. We're going to let it go. I got a new filter on it, so we're going to put the filter on it, the rubber band again, and then tomorrow will be the day that we're just going to take a couple tablespoons out. We'll stir it up, take a couple tablespoons out, and then really feed it good. All right? And then at that point in time, after we feed it really good, we're going to watch to see how much it rises. And once it rises doubles almost in size, then we're going to put it right in the refrigerator. All right, we're going to kind of stop that fermentation process and we're going to put it right in the refrigerator. That way it is nice and active and fluffy and ready to go. All right, so stay tuned for the last day tomorrow. Okay, so we're back for day 7. Hopefully this should be the last day. It smells pretty sour. Not pretty sour, it's starting to smell sour, so I'm going to give it a good mix up here. Kind of get some of those bubbles going. It's been 24 hours. I wanted to try and check it earlier, but I didn't, so I'm just going to kind of mix it up. I got some big bubbles here on top developing, which is really good. Okay, now what we're going to do a little bit different is we're going to take just 2 tablespoons out, all right? And we're going to put it into a quart-sized jar. 2 tablespoons is also 1/8 of a cup. So if you wanted, you could do 1/8 of a cup instead of the 2 tablespoons. Same thing. Okay? So we have that in there. We're going to use the rest of this. This is good. This would be really good for bagels now since it's the last day. And then what we're going to do is we're really going to feed it heavy. We're going to add, yeah, it's nice and bubbly in there. Nice. We're going to add a 1/2 cup of flour. Oh, this easy. That was just not big enough. And then I'm going to add a little less than a 1/2 cup of water. The reason for that is the more water you have, sometimes the more dense it can be, which it doesn't allow it to rise as much or as well. So this is our time where we want to start seeing it rise really good so that we can get it into the refrigerator. So, and then use it. So you're just going to kind of stir it in. Now this is a little thick for me. I'm going to add just a tad more that I have in here. I need a bigger bamboo thing this time. Alright, want to stir really, really good. Get a bunch of air in there. Start to make sure that we're getting it really, really active. And so today it's a little bit thicker, which is fine. Now, some people mark on the jar where it's at and they're waiting for that starter to rise and double. I haven't ever done that. You certainly could. Mine doesn't ever really get double. Maybe it's just not active enough, or maybe my method's not completely the right way, but it works for me. We still get some good bagels and good sandwich bread out of it, so this is what works for me and for our family. So, all right, we got a nice thick batter. All right, so what we're gonna do is just kind of mark where we're at, and what we want to do is we want to see it rise or double. Once it gets to that point in time, we're going to stop it. We're going to put it into the refrigerator, and it'll be ready to go. All right, so there you have it. We're going to kind of put it over to the side. We're going to kind of keep checking it. I'm going to guess probably about 12 hours. So if it's really hot in the kitchen today, it's not as bad, or it's not as warm, so it's not going to be overly hot and go right away. So if it's a hotter kitchen or hotter day, then you would expect it to be more bubbly and rise quicker. but this is a pretty normal day. So I'm gonna expect probably about 12 hours, and then in 12 hours it should be good to go, and we can put it in the refrigerator until we are ready to use it. Now you could, if you're ready to use it, you could use it right away for some bagels. I have found that it takes a couple weeks of, feeding and adding and feeding, or, making bagels and then feeding it again for my sourdough starter to get active enough to really make some light, fluffy sandwich bread. I don't usually do the artisan big rolls of bread that you'll see used like in the Dutch oven. I don't typically make those. We just use a lot of sandwich bread in the bagels. We do tortillas, things like that. So what I use it for, it is absolutely sufficient. We will come back tomorrow. We will check it and hopefully get it in the refrigerator and ready to use for some of our recipes. All right, so we are back with our last day of the sourdough starter. It's been about 12 hours, and we've got some nice bubbles kind of building up into our jar here. And at this point in time, we are good to go. Now, if you had time right now, you could go ahead and go into making bagels, tortillas, or pancakes, things like that, because you only have about a half a cup in here to use, and a lot of those recipes are about a half a cup or less. But sandwich bread, you're going to want to wait a little bit longer. If you don't have the time, go ahead and cover it and just pop it in the refrigerator for now until you are able to use it. And that is about it. All right. If you like the video, please like it, subscribe to our page. We are going to have much more homesteading stuff that you can follow. We're doing our garden. We're getting that going right now. And we're going to be doing a lot of canning and preserving of all of the stuff from our garden this year. I'll give you some tips and tricks on doing that, as well as meal prepping and how I use a lot of the stuff from my garden in order to meal prep and plan for dinners throughout the week. If you have any questions or comments, anything that you'd like to see, go ahead and please put them down in the comments so that I can know what you want, and I hope to see you back soon.